I will never accept Joe Biden as president. I mean, if that's your question, that's my answer. I just don't believe that he's right for our country.
You think Donald Trump has won?
Absolutely, I do. I mean, for me to believe that Joe Biden got 78 million votes, got the most votes of any president ever in the history of voting, I find that very hard to believe.
It's never going to be accepted. It's never going to be accepted.
Nobody I know who's running for office talks about defunding the police.
Many affluent suburbs have essentially already begun pursuing a defunding of the police.
This movement is not new. This is about investment. I really consider it a refund.
Defunding police means defunding police.
We need to truly cut $1 billion in NYPD spending.
We have this super aggressive police department. So yes, defund your butts.
Not only do we need to disinvest, but we need to completely dismantle the Minneapolis Police Department.
2 House Democrats unveiling a bill. It would take away federal resources from police departments across the nation.
The BREATHE Act is bold. It's meaningful. It's transformative.
I am so proud to endorse Senator Bernie Sanders for president.
This is not just about running for president.
I am endorsing Bernie Sanders because he's not going to sell us out.
Nobody I know who's running for office talks about defunding the police.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. It is a Friday for us. It's a Friday. Welcome to the show. My name is Wayne Dupree, and you are looking live at the co-host of the Wayne Dupree Show right here.
Hi.
Blue Eyes, Leah Bella.
Hi. Make sure you're sharing the show. And for those that are asking, we will go live to the Trump election update. There we are. So you want to share the show for those that aren't watching.
Right. For those that and then let me also introduce the brother Reverend Pastor Deacon Dr. Bishop over there, Mr. Brian Smith. What's up, Brian?
I gotta look up now.
He's down there. He's down.
It's like the Brady Bunch all over again.
Who's that? Hey, move. Woman in the move. Move.
I can't see him. There he is.
Hey, bro.
We just have to figure out which one's Marsha.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
Oh, my Marsha.
Marsha don't trust nobody. But okay. So.
After that football got thrown at her face, I guess not.
Oh, that's right. Her nose was all jacked.
Yeah.
Okay, so basically, the Trump legal team is getting ready to make an update. We decided that we were going to carry it live. So when they go live, we will have it for you right now. We are going to open up the phone lines. So if you actually tell our audience about the app so that if they want to call in,
they can do it.
Yeah, they can.
Yeah, go to the Wayne Dupree podcast. What you do is you go to your store and just type in Wayne Dupree podcast. It'll auto-populate. Just click on it, download it. It just takes a few minutes. And once you download it, you can actually watch us live right now. And then if you take a look at the screen that I'm on, you'll see the second ticket over says podcast downloads call studio. What's convenient about this is you don't have to remove yourself from the show and then dial the number. You'll be able to still watch the show. You just click call studio and it will ring into the studio. So that way you're not trying to dial the number and watch the show at the same time. It's very convenient. So before we get started, go ahead and type in the Wayne Dupree podcast and download it. It is free. If you're concerned about that, it's free. It's 100% free. You can also check out your weather and traffic too while you're on there, which is pretty cool. So download it now.
And for those of you that are nervous about apps, like these apps will take. Oh, we got somebody. All right.
No. That's well, I mean, I can.
She's just kind of babbling on.
Yeah.
I'll say it real quick. It's a very light app. It doesn't take up much space.
Help facilitate during these challenging times. We're ensuring that that adequate infection control measures are in place. To make sure that they are in place is critical to preventing the virus from.
They're talking about the virus. They're doing a side-by-side coverage of the restrictions and different things that are happening in the states today, like in Maryland. Well, actually tomorrow, like in Maryland, 5 o'clock tomorrow. Yeah.
Well, here in Pennsylvania, we're confused. We can't leave the state, and there's a little small town here on the border who has to go into that state for shopping. So there was just a big article yesterday in our local newspaper on how are they going to get food, because the closest food and doctor's offices are 5 minutes away in Maryland. And the state's saying you can't go. You're going to have to drive an hour and 15 up the road to get food now. And they're very upset about that.
State of Ohio, with the Republican Governor Mike DeWine, who's become a commie bastard. He's put all mask restrictions inside, outside, Thanksgiving restrictions, all kinds of. You can't go out past 10 o'clock. You can't be out at 6 to 10 because that's when COVID hits you the hardest, apparently. And now there's marches on his house the past couple of nights, and the Republican legislature just passed a law yesterday, saying that neither the governor nor the health advisors can shut down any businesses in Ohio. So if you're a business in Ohio, you're protected now.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are awaiting members of Trump's lawyer team. They said that they have a huge announcement to make today. Real quick, I know y'all saw about the rescind. The two Republicans in Wayne County decided that they were going to change their mind again and call for the results not to be certified. So
they got lied to.
Okay.
They were told that if they put their vote forward, that they were going to go ahead and get an independent
audit.
Well, that went up to Secretary of State. Secretary of State said, no, not today, man. So both of them said, oh, really? Well, we're backing out. This is ridiculous. We want a fair and free election.
Right. And at that point, they were already doxxed. They were already harassed. They were screamed and shouted at. What do they have to lose at that point? It was going to be the same result, whether they rescinded or not. So they might as well rescind it and fought and showed a good example for other Republicans to do the same if they feel like something's wrong. So good for them. We need more of it.
Yep. I just feel a little bit differently. I just felt that they shouldn't have did it in the first place.
Well, but they got lied to. They were told by local and come on, man. If I'm going to vote on something that I think I'm voting on, and then all of a sudden I find out 24 hours later that what I voted on has now changed. Let's go back and revisit it. Let's talk about it.
For me, it's what you believe in. If you believe that it shouldn't have been certified, then don't certify it.
Oh, okay. I'm going to agree with you. They should have never have gone forward without a guarantor.
Yeah.
I'm with you. Yep.
Yeah. I agree too.
You're not going to make me sign something.
Oh, looks like Sydney's there. Is that Sydney Powell?
Yeah.
It is.
All right.
Oh, here we go, guys.
Here we go.
Rudy.
Good afternoon.
Did he just hit the mic?
Yeah.
Coming.
Can you turn it up?
With his chin.
Of our legal team.
I can't.
We're representing President Trump, and we're representing the Trump campaign. When I finish, Sydney Powell and then Jenna Ellis will follow me, and we will present in brief the evidence that we've collected over the last, I guess it is 2 weeks. Also, Joseph DeGenever, Victoria Tenziger here with me. There are a lot more lawyers working on this, but we're the senior lawyers.
Sounds good.
And Boris Epstein. So I guess the best way to describe this is when we began our representation of the president, we certainly were confronted with a very anomalous set of results. The president way ahead on election night, 700,000 or 800,000 in Pennsylvania. Somehow he lost Pennsylvania. We have statisticians willing to testify that that's almost statistically impossible to have happened in the period of time that it happened. But of course, that's just speculation. as we started investigating, both our investigations and the very patriotic and brave American citizens that have come forward are extraordinary. Extraordinary number of people, extraordinary number of witnesses. And what emerged very quickly is there's not a singular voter fraud in one state. This pattern repeats itself in a number of states, almost exactly the same pattern, which to any experienced investigator, prosecutor, would suggest that there was a plan from a centralized place to execute these various acts of voter fraud, specifically focused on big cities, and specifically focused on, as you would imagine, big cities controlled by Democrats, and particularly focused on big cities that have a long history of corruption. The number of voter fraud cases in Philadelphia could fill a library. Just a few weeks ago, there was a conviction for voter fraud, and 1-2 weeks before that. And I've often said, I guess sarcastically, but it's true, the only surprise I would have found in this is that Philadelphia hadn't cheated in this election, because for the last 60 years, they've cheated in just about every single election. You could say the same thing about Detroit. Each one of these cities are cities that are controlled by Democrats, which means they can get away with anything they want to do. It means they have a certain degree of control over, certainly control the election board completely, and they control law enforcement. And unfortunately, they have some friendly judges that will issue ridiculously irrational opinions just to come out in their favor. So let's start with the specifics. Pennsylvania. In Pennsylvania, the margin of victory now for Biden, which is not a victory, it's a fraud, is 69,140 votes. The reality is that we have 682,770 ballots for which we have affidavits that there was no inspection of that ballot at the time that it was entered in the vote. It was a mail ballot. Mail ballots are particularly prone to fraud. We were warned about that by Jimmy Carter, President Jimmy Carter, and Secretary Baker in a report about a dozen years ago, in which they said that mail balloting is particularly susceptible of fraud, that we should very carefully consider ever doing it, and that it can be taken advantage of. Justice Souter warned us of the same thing in a comment in an election law case. And even the New York Times wrote articles about how dangerous mail-in voting was. And this is the first time we ever did it en masse. And I think we proved that all three are prophets. It's not only susceptible to fraud, it is easily susceptible to fraud, particularly if you have a plan or scheme, which sounds eerily similar to what Joe Biden told us a few days before the election, that he had the best voter fraud team in the world. Well, they were good. I don't know that they were that good, because they made significant mistakes, like all crooks do, and we caught them. One of them was pushing out Republican inspectors. Every state, almost every civilized country, even Tanzania and places you wouldn't think of, have rules about inspectors, particularly for mail-in ballots. And why particularly for mail-in ballots? Because they can more easily be defrauded, and you can't check on it. People who have never done a mail-in ballot, I'm going to show you why it's so easy. Well, you fill out an envelope like this. You put your, usually in New York, it would be your assembly district and the precinct in which you're voting. You fill out your name and your address, and you sign it. You then use an inner envelope, and you put the ballot inside the inner envelope. You seal it all, and you send it in. When it's being counted, almost invariably in the United States, up until the mass cheating that went on in this election, a Republican and a Democrat inspector as well as others, if there are other parties, is allowed to watch the unsealing of this ballot. It used to go on all over America when we conducted honest elections. Because the only time you can ever find out if it's a fraudulent ballot is when it is looked at. The minute you approve this, it's thrown away, gone for eternity. The only thing left is the vote. That could have been Mickey Mouse. That could have been a dead person. That could have been not filled out properly. That could have been the same person 30 times. That could have been, and all these things have happened, by the way. That could have been nothing filled out. We'd never know. So, for example, the recount being done in Georgia will tell us nothing, because these fraudulent ballots will just be counted again because they wouldn't supply the signatures to match the ballots. So it means nothing to have counted these ballots because, for example, in Pennsylvania, where we have probably our most precise evidence, 682,770 of these ballots were cast, put in, and they weren't inspected, which renders them ballots that are null and void, cannot be counted, have to be removed from the vote. Why? For several reasons, not the least of which is that was basically only one of two places in the state where it was done. So in the other parts of the state, there was a legitimate inspection of the ballots. So if you have two different standards in different parts of the state, one favoring one part of the state, the other disfavoring the other part of the state, that's a classic violation of the Equal Protection Clause of the United States Constitution. Bush v. Gore being the most recent case that teaches that. That's not the only fraud that went on in Pennsylvania. All of the other frauds carried out in the other states by the Democrat bosses happened there as well. For example, if you've made a mistake in that ballot and you lived in Philadelphia or in Pittsburgh, you were allowed to fix the mistake. But if you lived in what would be considered more Republican or Trump parts of the state, you were given no such right. One of our plaintiffs, Mr. Henry, cast an absentee ballot, and he failed to put it in the secure envelope inside. He just put it in open, naked. That ballot was cast aside because it was invalid, because that breaks the privacy of the vote. In Pittsburgh and in Philadelphia, if they noticed that there wasn't an inner envelope, they'd contact the voter and allow him to vote again. Or if he didn't fill it out completely, or if he made a mistake and didn't sign his full name, he was allowed to cure it. There is no such provision under the law of Pennsylvania. The Democrat Secretary of State made that up in order to maximize the votes in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh and to minimize the votes in the other parts of the state. Clearly illegal, clearly voter fraud, easily provable, hundreds of witnesses, maybe thousands. We have, I'll give you another example. We have 17,000 provisional ballots cast in Pittsburgh. Do you know what a provisional ballot is? Provisional ballot usually happens this way, and about 15 of the 17,000 happen this way. You walk in and you say, I'm here to vote today. Oh, Mr. Giuliani, you already voted. I did? I don't remember voting. Oh, yes, you cast an absentee ballot. No, I didn't. Yes, you did. No, I didn't. Yes, you did. So why does that happen 17,000 times in Pittsburgh? People walked in thinking actually 15,000 to be precise. Why did it happen 15,000 times that people in Pittsburgh walked in to vote and they had already voted according to the Democrat election machine? Did they forget? That many people with bad memories in Pittsburgh? Or is the following correct? that as witnesses will testify, they were instructed by the Democrat bosses when they had a ballot in which there was no one registered, just assign it to somebody. Just assign it to Rudy Giuliani. So when Rudy Giuliani, and maybe Rudy Giuliani won't show up to vote. And if he does show up to vote, we'll give him a provisional ballot. That is what we call circumstantial evidence of the fraud. The direct evidence of the fraud of the people who will testify that, in fact, that's what happened to them. As well as the 50 to 60 witnesses we have for the way they were treated and not allowed to inspect the ballots. They weren't just not allowed to do it. They were pushed. A few cases, they were assaulted. In all cases, they were put in a corral so far away. Probably the closest they got is from here to the back of that room. We could do like a, did you all watch My Cousin Vinny? It's one of my favorite war movies because he comes from Brooklyn. And when the nice lady said she saw, and then he says to her, how many fingers do I got up? And she says, 3. Well, she was too far away to see it was only 2. These people were further away than my cousin Vinny was from the witness. They couldn't see a thing. Now, I don't know. You're going to tell me that 60 people are lying? They didn't just tell me this. They swore under penalty of perjury, which is something no Democrat's ever done. You don't even ask Biden about this. You know, put him under penalty of perjury. He doesn't even get asked questions about it. He doesn't get asked questions about all the evidence of the crimes that he committed. These people are under penalty of perjury. The names are on an affidavit. They swear that they weren't allowed to carry out their function as inspectors. And it's not just a technical thing. There's a reason they did it. Why would you not allow people to carry out the function they've been allowed to do for 50 years, 60 years? Why wouldn't you allow inspections of those ballots? Because you knew you were going to use those ballots to catch Biden up. And you had a big road ahead of you. You had to catch him up for 700,000 to 800,000 votes that he was behind. And the only way you were going to do it was with the mail-in ballots. You couldn't have a Democrat and Republican inspector around. They don't even have Democrats watching it because they'd be afraid that they'd be honest Democrats who would say, you're cheating. So that takes us to Michigan, where there was an honest Democrat who said they were cheating. And we'll show you her affidavit, because I know you keep reporting falsely that we have no evidence, that we have no specific acts of fraud. That's because the coverage of this has been almost as dishonest as the scheme itself. The American people are entitled to know this. You don't have a right to keep it from them. I mean, you don't report to them that a citizen of this country, a very fine woman, who is willing to allow me to give you her name. I can't give you all these affidavits because if I do, these people will be harassed. They'll be threatened. They may lose their job. They will lose their friends. We've lost lawyers in this case because they've been threatened. We've had lawyers that need protection. What's going on in this country is horrible.
I hope Sydney speaks
You're
soon.
imposing is making it worse. But Jesse Jacob is an adult citizen and a resident of the state of Michigan. She's been an employee of the city of Detroit for decades.
Yeah, terrible.
Come on.
She can tell you her age.
I'm hearing a lot of mainstream media isn't sharing this or showing this. So if you want to, please share the show so other people can
And she
see
was
it.
trained by the city of Detroit and the state of Michigan. She was basically trained to cheat. She said that I was instructed by my supervisor to adjust the mailing date of these absentee ballot packages to be dated earlier than when they were actually sent in. The supervisor made that announcement for all workers to engage in that fraudulent practice. That's not me saying that. That's just American citizens saying that under oath. I don't know. Maybe you could say she's lying, but you can't say there's no evidence. This is what we call evidence. This is direct evidence, not circumstantial. I tried many, many cases, as did all my colleagues here. Put a witness on a witness stand. The witness is testifying to their own knowledge. This witness goes on the witness stand and she will say, I was told to adjust the date on the absentee ballots. I witnessed election workers and employees going over to the voting booths with voters in order to watch them vote and coach them for whom to vote. Illegal. She will testify to that. I don't know. Biden's people can cross-examine her. You can't just throw it away. Gee, there's no evidence. Next time you say that, you'll be lying. Because there is evidence. This, oh, by the way, this is public. You can all get it. It's attached to the complaint in Costantino versus the city of Detroit.
Sydney.
By my supervisor, not to ask for a driver's license or any photo ID when a person was trying to vote. Don't ask for identification. Why would you not ask for identification?
All right.
Because you knew that a lot of people not entitled to vote were going to come in and early vote. Because you knew that illegal immigrants were going to be allowed to vote. You knew, if you lived in Philadelphia, unless you're stunad, that's an Italian expression for stupid. Unless you're stupid, you knew that a lot of people were coming over from Camden to vote. They do every year. Happens all the time in Philly. It's about as frequent as getting beaten up at a Philadelphia Eagle football game. Happens all the time. All the time. And it's allowed to happen because it is a Democrat, corrupt city. And has been for years. Many, many years. And they carried it out in places they could get away with it. They didn't carry it out in neutral places. They didn't carry it out in Republican places. They didn't carry it out where the law is respected. They carried it out in a corrupt city where the district attorney releases criminals en masse, which is why it has so much crime. She also said, I observed a large number of people who came to the satellite location to vote in person, but they had already applied for and submitted an absentee ballot. So she observed a lot of people voting twice. Again, this is Jesse Jacob, not me. I was instructed not to invalidate any ballots and not to look for any deficiency in the ballots.
Didn't he say he just gave the whole name of the person?
Sure did.
Because you're cheating.
Yeah.
On purpose cheating. Intentionally.
I guess they gave him permission to, but he said he wasn't going to do it.
A institution. This is an instruction.
I want to see Sydney.
From the election commission or the employer to the worker. Don't look for any deficiencies in the ballots. I was instructed not to look at any of the signatures on the absentee ballots. If she was
They're saying he had permission with the name.
Not to look for any of the on the absentee ballots.
What?
He had permission.
You'd be assigned it in the first place.
Yeah, he would have had to have permission.
In order to identify it.
The witness gave permission to Rudy to say his name.
Many of the absentee ballots were fraudulent, and they knew that. And they didn't want to have a count of that. On November 4, 2020, I was instructed to improperly predate the absentee ballots when the receipt date was actually was after November 3rd, 2020. Now, this is really significant because Justice Alito of the Supreme Court instructed Pennsylvania that any ballot that comes in after 8 o'clock on November 3rd, 2020, had to be put aside and not opened because there's a question as to its legality and its constitutionality. What she's telling you is that they blatantly disregarded that order, that they took ballots that were marked the 4th and the 5th and the 6th, and they marked it down for the 3rd in blatant disregard of the order of the United States Supreme Court. This is I don't know if she's a Democrat or Republican. I assume if she's working for the I assume if she's working for the city of Detroit that she's a Democrat. I assume, but I may be wrong. She's a citizen. I've never met her, never coached her. And I'd like you to note that it's signed under penalties of perjury. We have 100 more of these. I can't show them to you because those people don't want to be harassed. They don't want to have their lives torn apart by the goons on the other side. We don't do that to them. They've done that to a lot of our people. And they've done it for 4 years. And it's outrageous that it's tolerated, and it's tolerated because you condone it in the press, and you don't cover it, and you don't condemn it. And it shouldn't happen to a Republican or a Democrat. A lawyer shouldn't have to withdraw from a case because he's representing the President of the United States. There are many more affidavits here. I'd like to read them all to you, but I don't have the time. You should have had the time and energy to go look for them. That's your job. Like it's my job to defend the president, to represent the president. It's your job to read these things and not falsely report that there's no evidence. Do you know how many affidavits we have in the Michigan case? 220 affidavits. They're not all public, but 8 of them are. 4 affiants here. Those are people who give affidavits, report an incident that under any other circumstances would have been on the front page of all your newspapers if it didn't involve the hatred that you have, the irrational, pathological hatred that you have for the president. What they swear to is that at 4:30 in the morning, a truck pulled up to the Detroit Center where they were counting ballots. The people thought it was food, so they all ran to the truck. It wasn't food. It was thousands and thousands of ballots. And the ballots were in garbage cans. They were in paper bags.
Oh, man, I hope he can prove this.
And they were taken into the center. They were put on a number of tables. At that time, they thought all the Republican inspectors had left. All but 2 had. And an employee of Dominion.
Uh-oh.
Who we'll address a little bit later, Dominion. Here's what they jointly swear to. That every ballot that they could see, everything they could hear, these were ballots for Biden. When they saw a ballot, these were ballots only for Biden, meaning there was no down ticket, just Biden. Many of them didn't have anything on the outer envelope because these ballots were produced very quickly, very swiftly, and they're estimated to be a minimum of 60,000, maximum of 100,000. Many of them were triple counted, which means they were put into the counting machine this way. Once, twice, 3 times. I didn't see that. I don't know that, but for the fact that 3 American citizens are willing to swear to it. And we're not going to let them go to court and do that? We're going to let this election go by when there are, in this case, 60 witnesses that can prove what I'm saying to you and other acts of fraud in Michigan?
Is Fox News covering this?
I mean, what's happened to this country?
Let me check.
If we're going to let that.
I don't know. I just said some are covering it, some aren't.
Let me
We
check.
let Al Gore carry on an election dispute longer than this one has been going on for one state and for Chad's. This happened in Pennsylvania. It happened in Michigan. Michigan probably right now, if I count up the affidavits, just one case alone, Trump v. Benson. A case
I don't think Fox News is, but Fox Business is. Fox Business is, but not
to
Fox
get
News.
the Wayne County Board of Supervisors.
Right Side Broadcasting is
Well, they
covering it.
They decertified.
Fox News is covering it. I have it on my TV now. I just turned it on to check.
Major networks, Brian. Major networks.
100 affidavits show.
I know. I'm just saying. I don't know. Nobody else. Yeah, I don't see.
We're
anybody else.
covering it.
Counting ballots improperly, counting them 3 and 4 times, having people vote 3 and 4 times.
ABC's covering
dating
Corona.
ballots to the point of at least 300,000 illegitimate ballots that we can specifically identify. The margin in Michigan was 146 1,121. And these ballots were all cast basically in Detroit, that Biden won 80-20. So you see a change as a result of the election in Michigan, if you take out Wayne County. So it's a very significant case. That is being raised in the case of Constantino versus the city of Detroit. Not by us, but by an individual plaintiff. We are helping and assisting in that case, however. And you can find all the affidavits that you want filed in that case. And you can find out they're not just allegations, they're allegations supported by sworn testimony, which is a lot better than Joe Biden has ever done on anything. He doesn't answer questions, much less give you sworn affidavits. Wisconsin had a very small margin, 20,544 last time I looked. In Wisconsin, without going into great detail, very similar plan. Republicans shut out in the city of Milwaukee and also in Madison. Republicans almost uniformly shut out from the absentee process, not allowed to inspect, not allowed to look at the ballots. We have in Milwaukee and in the state of Wisconsin a much stricter law. Wisconsin doesn't allow mail-in ballots. They didn't buy into the big mail-in ballot situation. Wisconsin, when you look at their constitution, almost seems to not like absentee ballots. They state it's not a right, a privilege. And they have very, very strict procedures. And the strict procedure says that you can't be given an absentee ballot. You have to personally apply for it. It's illegal, basically, to solicit a vote. And they have actually many reasons for it. That probably goes back to their progressive days. When I say progressive, I mean late 19th century, early 20th century progressive, when that really meant progressive, not retrogressive. So there are 60,000 ballots.
NBC's live right now on YouTube showing why Biden won.
In Madison, that, as far as we can tell, and this is why we're auditing, because we have very good information that the numbers are going to come out about here that don't have applications. Under the law of the state of Wisconsin, already decided, if there's no application for an absentee ballot, the absentee ballot is thrown away. This all happened in two places in Wisconsin. Didn't happen in northern Wisconsin. Didn't happen in Republican Wisconsin. Didn't happen in neutral Wisconsin, where there are an equal number of Republicans and Democrats. It happened in a place where the vote was 75, 80% for the Democrat. You take away any number of those, and that 20,000 lead disappears. In other words, if you count the lawful votes, Trump won Wisconsin by a good margin. Indeed, if you count the lawful votes in Pennsylvania, he won it by about 300,000 votes. Also, in the lawsuit filed in Wisconsin, which is really a petition because of their procedures, there were no inspectors provided for the count of the illegal ballots. There were numerous backdated ballots. We're just counting them now, run over into the thousands. And there were many precincts in which there was an overvote. Now, let me explain to you what an overvote is. Which is something you should explain to the American people, because it's about
independent or
circumstantial evidence of massive fraud that you can have. An overvote is if 200% of the people who are registered in a district vote. Think about that. 200% of the registered voters in a district vote. What does that mean? That means somebody voted twice. That means somebody who's not entitled to vote voted, an illegal, a person from another city or state, a person who's not registered. But what it means is that those are illegitimate votes. You don't have an overvote of 200% or 300%. You don't have an overvote of 100%. Most precincts don't have 100% turnout. In fact, classically, it's considered to be an overvote if you go over 80%. Well, in Michigan and Wisconsin, we have overvotes in numerous precincts of 150%, 200%, and 300%.
He keeps fighting that mic.
One of the reasons why the Republicans did not certify in Wayne, Michigan, Wayne County, Michigan, is because the overvote was so high, monstrously high. In about 2/3 of the precincts in the city of Detroit, which means magically 3 times the number of registered voters turned out to vote. In fact, we have precincts in which 2 times the number of people who live there, including children, voted. That's absurd. The frustration of this is, what I'm describing to you is a massive fraud. It isn't a little teeny one. It isn't, 100 votes switched here or there. Georgia, we're about to file a major lawsuit in Georgia. That'll be filed probably tomorrow. I don't need to go through it. Virtually the same things I've told you before. In the city of Atlanta, Republicans were not allowed to watch the absentee mail-in ballot process. Inspections completely cast aside. And we have numerous double voters. We have numerous out-of-state voters. And we have specific evidence of intimidation and changes of vote. That'll all be in the lawsuit that comes out tomorrow. Arizona is a state that we're looking at very, very carefully. I would say we're probably going to bring a lawsuit in Arizona. More than probably. I think we are going to bring a lawsuit in Arizona. We're still collecting that evidence. And the state that we're looking at that would surprise you is we have very, very significant amount of fraud allegations in the state of New Mexico, and we have a significant number of allegations in the state of Virginia. I don't know yet whether the number in Virginia will reach the number that can turn the election. In the states that we have indicated in red, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Nevada, and Arizona, we more than double the number of votes needed to overturn the election in terms of provable illegal ballots. All you got to do to find out if I'm misleading you at all is to look at the lawsuits. Look what's alleged. Look at the affidavits. Maybe we can supply more affidavits. In order to do it, I have to get permission from the people. But in the materials I have here, there are at least 10 that come from citizens. We have 1,000 at least, and we're getting more every day. And there are other aspects of this fraud that at this point, I really can't reveal. This is really enough. It's enough to overturn any election. It's disgraceful what happened. And I'll conclude by asking you to just think about this for a minute. What happened on the morning of November 3rd when they were going to count this new kind of ballot, this mail-in ballot? Did every Democrat leader in Pennsylvania and in Michigan and in Wisconsin and in Georgia and in Nevada and in Arizona, they all wake up and all separately have the same idea? Did they all separately have the idea that we're going to put Republican inspectors in pens? We're not going to let them look at mail-in or absentee ballots? They all independently come up with that. Like, just by coincidence. They say, hey, we're going to put the Republicans in pens and corrals. We're going to do it in Pittsburgh. We're going to do it in Philadelphia. We're going to do it in Detroit. We're going to do it in Milwaukee. We're going to do it in Las Vegas. We're going to do it in Phoenix. What did I miss? Oh, we're going to do it in Atlanta. Or is it the logical conclusion that I think any jury would accept as they heard this evidence that somebody had this plan? Maybe that was always the plan, to do this very, very questionable form of voting, which has been criticized by President Carter, Secretary Baker, and most experts on election reform. I think the logical conclusion is this is a common plan, a common scheme. It comes right directly from the Democrat Party, and it comes from the candidate. Clearly. That's the reason why Hillary Clinton said, don't concede, even if you're losing. That's the reason we had a Freudian slip by the candidate. And he said he had the best voter fraud team in the country. That's the reason why he probably didn't have to go out and campaign.
Right.
He had to have known what they were going to do. This had to be planned in advance. I'm kind of checking. Did they go, to the same contractor to get the corrals to put the Republicans in? And this is a disgraceful thing that was done in this country. Probably not much more disgraceful than the things these people did in office, which you didn't and don't bother to cover and you conceal from the American people. But we let this happen. We use largely a Venezuelan voting machine, in essence, to count our vote. We let this happen, we're going to become Venezuela. We cannot let this happen to us. We cannot not allow these crooks, because that's what they are, to steal an election from the American people. They elected Donald Trump. They didn't elect Joe Biden. Joe Biden is in the lead because of the fraudulent ballots, the illegal ballots that were produced and that were allowed to be used after the election was over. Give us an opportunity to prove it in court, and we will. Now I'm going to ask Sidney Powell
Woohoo!
describe to you what we can describe about another total.
And we continue to be listening to this update from President Trump's legal team. Some of you are going to be taking a quick 2-minute break. Stay right here with us on the News Now from Fox.
Oh, man.
Change.
What?
And it's being done by a company that specializes in voter fraud. I'll let Sidney describe that to you.
Thank you, Rudy. What we are really dealing with here and uncovering more by the day is the massive influence of communist money through Venezuela, Cuba, and likely China in the interference with our elections here in the United States. The Dominion voting systems, the Smartmatic technology software, and the software that goes in other computerized voting systems here as well, not just Dominion, were created in Venezuela at the direction of Hugo Chavez to make sure he never lost an election after one constitutional referendum came out the way he did not want it to come out. We have one very strong witness who has explained how it all works. His affidavit is attached to the pleadings of Lynn Wood in the lawsuit he filed in Georgia. It is a stunning, detailed affidavit because he was with Hugo Chavez while he was being briefed on how it worked. He was with Hugo Chavez when he saw it operate to make sure the election came out his way. That was the express purpose for creating this software. He has seen it operate, and as soon as he saw the multiple states shut down the voting on the night of the election, he knew the same thing was happening here, that was what had gone on. Now, the software itself was created with so many variables and so many back doors that can be hooked up to the internet or a thumb drive stuck in it or whatever. But one of its most characteristic features is its ability to flip votes. It can set and run an algorithm that probably ran all over the country to take a certain percentage of votes from President Trump and flip them to President Biden, which we might never have uncovered had the votes for President Trump not been so overwhelming in so many of these states that it broke the algorithm that had been plugged into the system. And that's what caused them to have to shut down in the states they shut down in. That's when they came in the back door with all the mail-in ballots, many of which they had actually fabricated. Some were on pristine paper with identically matching perfect circle dots for Mr. Biden. Others were shoved in batches. They're always put in a certain number of batches, and people would rerun the same batch. This corresponds to our statistical evidence that shows incredible spikes in the vote counts at particular times. And that corresponds to eyewitness testimony of numerous people who have come forward and said that they saw the ballots come in the back door at that time. Notably, the Dominion executives are nowhere to be found now. They are moving their offices overnight to different places. Their office in Toronto was shared with one of the Soros entities. One of the leaders of the Dominion project in overall is Lord Mallet Brown, Mr. Soros' number 2 person in the UK and part of his organization. There are ties of the Dominion leadership to the Clinton Foundation and to other known politicians in this country. Just to give you a brief description of how this worked, I'm going to quote from a letter that was written, and I will read that to make sure I get the quotes right. This person was objecting to the United States acquisition of Sequoia voting systems by Smartmatic, a foreign-owned company. I believe this transaction raises exactly the sort of foreign ownership issues that CFIUS is best positioned to examine for national security purposes. It's undisputed that Smartmatic is foreign-owned and it has acquired Sequoia. They keep changing the names as they go along. Different times when a problem comes up, they just create another corporation and call it a different name. But it was a voting machine company doing business in the United States. Sequoia voting machines were used to record over 125 million votes during the 2004 presidential election in the United States. Smartmatic now acknowledges that Antonio Mujica, a Venezuelan businessman, has controlling interest in Smartmatic, but the company has not revealed who all the Smartmatic owners are. According to the press, Smartmatic's owners are hidden through a web of offshore private entities, and that is, in fact, true. Smartmatic has been associated with the Venezuelan government led by Hugo Chavez, which is openly hostile to the United States, and of course, as we all know, communistic and really brutalizing its own people. The system has been continued there by Mr. Maduro and ensured his election. Smartmatic's possible connection to the Venezuelan government poses a potential national security concern in the context of its acquisition of Sequoia, because electronic voting machines are susceptible to tampering, and insiders are in the best position to engage in such tampering. This letter expresses concern of the Chicago 2006 primary election. And it ends by saying the products and services that are of Venezuelan origin, and evaluate Smartmatic's ownership to determine who could have influence and control over these and other Sequoia products and services are important to the national security of the United States. This letter was written to Hank Paulson on October 6, 2006 by Congresswoman Carolyn B. Maloney. Senators Klobuchar and Warren have raised these concerns as recently as December 2019. Why our government has not taken them seriously is beyond my comprehension, unless they have, some of the 3-letter agencies have used them themselves in other parts of the world. We know that the technology was exported to affect an election in Argentina. That's admitted by our friend who wrote the affidavit about Hugo Chavez and his interest in Smartmatic. Again, in 2006, Carolyn Maloney wrote the Honorable John Snow, the Secretary of the Treasury, about the issues. Speaking of Smartmatic's leadership, one of the Smartmatic patent holders, Eric Coomer, I believe his name is on the web as being recorded in a conversation with Antifa members, saying that he had the election rigged for Mr. Biden, nothing to worry about here, and they were going to F Trump. His social media is filled with hatred for the president and for the United States of America as a whole, as are the social media accounts of many other Smartmatic people. There has been widespread use of this. Dominion itself is utilized in 2,000 jurisdictions in 30 states. It has been uncertifiable in multiple states who realized all the problems that it had, including Texas. Experts have described it across the board, from a Princeton group of 3 professors to experts that we have talked to about its end user vulnerabilities. People can admittedly go in and change whatever they want. They can set the ratio of votes from one thing to another. They can say that a Biden vote counts as 1.25 and a Trump vote counts as 0.75. And those may be the numbers that were actually used here. It's not just the swing states that were affected. The algorithm was likely run across the country to affect the entire election. Like I said, we only discovered it this year because of the overwhelming number of votes for President Trump in the swing states that caused the machines to have to shut down for them to backfill for adding votes. We have evidence of different numbers of votes being injected into the system, the same identical, unique 6-digit number multiple times in at least 2 states that we've analyzed so far. And I'm talking about like 341,542 votes for Biden and 100,012 for Trump. There's no explanation, no logical explanation for the same numbers being injected 20 minutes apart into the machine.
Oops.
Software manual itself, you can download it from the internet, and I would encourage you all to read it because it specifically advertises some of these things as features of the system. Why it was ever allowed into this country is beyond my comprehension, and why nobody has dealt with it is absolutely appalling. The machines were easily accessible to hackers. There's video on the net that will explain to you how a kid with a cell phone can hack one of these voting machines. There's been no oversight of Dominion or its software. Workers in each county were trained by Dominion, but there's no evidence of any monitoring otherwise. We have testimony of different workers admitting that they were trained how to dispose of Trump votes and add to Biden votes. The software has a feature pursuant to which you can drag and drop any number of batches of votes to the candidate of your choice or simply throw them away. So we have mathematical evidence in a number of states of massive quantities of Trump votes being trashed, just simply in the trash like you would on your computer with any file, and Biden votes being injected. That's addition to the flipping. I mean, it really happens in 2 ways. There's an algorithm that runs that automatically flips all the votes, and then each operator has the ability to go in, override settings. They can ignore a signature. They can ignore the top line of the ballot. They can go down ballot and select who they want to change the results for. The gentleman who founded Smartmatic, there's video of him on the internet explaining that, yes, at least one occasion, he admits they changed 1 million votes with no problem. Many of the jurisdictions that have had this problem might not have known of the issues, but many did. And I think a full-scale criminal investigation needs to be undertaken immediately by the Department of Justice and by every state's equivalent attorney general's office or state investigatory unit, because there's evidence of different benefits being provided to the people who spent $100 million of taxpayer money at the last minute for their state to get the Dominion voting systems put in time for this election in different ways. A person that a lawyer told me got, quote, election insurance, meaning that he would be able to make sure he was elected. I'm sure they explained that feature in detail to many people who expressed interest in putting this voting system in. Texas denied certification of the Dominion system in 2019, but there are no doubt issues with the software that Texas did use, unbeknownst to Texas, I would imagine, since they went to great trouble to examine the Dominion systems and reject them. But other software, the source code that does the alterations is embedded, we've been told, in the source code all across the country and all the voting machines. There's no doubt it has been used to alter elections in other countries. We know specifically that Venezuela exported it for that purpose to Argentina and other Latin American companies to make sure that the corrupt rulers who were willing to pay the highest price for being in office were allowed to rig their elections. This is stunning, heartbreaking, infuriating, and the most unpatriotic
God bless you
acts I can even imagine. For
She has
people
tears in her
to
eyes.
have participated in any way, shape, or form. And I want the American public to know right now that we will not be intimidated. American patriots are fed up with the corruption from the local level to the highest level of our government, and we are going to take this country back. We are not going to be intimidated. We are not going to back down. We are going to clean this mess up now. President Trump won by a landslide. We are going to prove it, and we are going to reclaim the United States of America for the people who vote for freedom.
Amen. Wow.
You're
Wow.
not doing in the Wisconsin counties that use this. Why are you only doing a recount?
And excuse me, that we're not out to the questions at this point. So excuse me, we're not at the questions at this point. My name is Jenna Ellis, and I'm the senior legal advisor to the Trump campaign. And I'd like to just explain now where we've been and where we're at and what you can expect from this process. So what you have heard, I'm sure, in the fake newspapers tomorrow will be one of two things. Either there was not sufficient evidence that we've presented, or we spoke too long. Okay, so what you've heard now is basically an opening statement. This is what you can expect to see when we get to court to actually have a full trial on the merits, to actually show this evidence in court and prove our case. This is not a Law and Order episode where everything is neatly wrapped up in 60 minutes. For those of you who are here in this room or maybe tuned out in other networks, clearly you've never been court reporters. Trials take time. Putting on evidence takes time. This is basically an opening statement so the American people can understand what the networks have been hiding and what they refuse to cover, because all of your fake news headlines are dancing around the merits of this case and are trying to delegitimize what we are doing here. Let me be very clear that our objective is to make sure to preserve and protect election integrity. President Trump has been saying from day one that this is about maintaining free and fair elections in this country. It is not about overturning an outcome. It is about making sure that election integrity is preserved, and every American should want that. If every American is not on board with that, you have to ask yourself why. And if your fake news network is not covering this or allowing you to cover it fairly and accurately, you should ask yourself why. This is absolutely a legitimate legal basis. We have been asked to provide an entire case that generally would take years in civil litigation. I've been a prosecutor. I have tried cases with far simpler facts. One thing happened in a matter of minutes, and it still takes days. And we go through a jury process. This is the court of public opinion right now. We are not trying our case in the court of public opinion, because if we were, we would get unbiased jurors. I would strike 99% of you from the jury, and I would be allowed to because of the fake news coverage you provide. Unbiased jurors. And until you step out of your role as a journalist and actually go into a courtroom and you are a judge on a bench that is sworn
She just glad handed each and every one of them.
powers, then your opinion does not matter. The facts matter, the truth matters. And if you are fair reporters, you will cover that fairly and appropriately, and you will allow coverage of our media team here and our legal team. That is absolutely shocking that all you cover are around the margins. And I've seen all of you taking pictures right now, and I can anticipate what your headlines are going to be. If you are not willing to talk about the evidence that has been presented, then that is absolutely unacceptable for journalistic standards. This is an opening statement. This is something where we have told you what the evidence will show, and we have given you a brief description. That happens in a courtroom all the time, where that's not the fact-finding process. That is just an overview. That is what we have given you today, because the American people deserve to know what we have uncovered in the last couple of weeks. Remember, this is such a short time frame, and this is an elite strike force team that is on behalf of the president and the campaign to make sure that our Constitution is protected. We are a nation of rules, not a nation of rulers. There is not someone that just gets to pick who the next president is outside the will of the American people. And that is our task, because when we talk about voter fraud, it's actually election official fraud. That cannot stand. The Constitution requires that the state legislatures are the ones that make election law. It still has to go by the U.S. Constitution. But what has happened in this case is that state and local level officials, and all the way up, have changed the rules. That's what the Democrats do. If they don't like the rules, they change them. And they change them at the last minute. They manipulate them. They want to tear down our American system. Our founders were so brilliant that they anticipated this, that there would be corruption, there would be foreign influence, there would be attempts to manipulate the outcome of the election, especially with who they called our chief magistrate. I would encourage all of you to go home and actually read Alexander Hamilton's Federalist 68 and see what he described as an advocacy position to adopt and ratify the Electoral College and the process by which we select our president. We select our president through the Electoral College not because it disenfranchises voters, but because it is a security mechanism for exactly the type of corruption that we are uncovering. And every American should be grateful and thankful that our founders had the foresight to put in those protections and provisions to make sure that your legitimate legal vote is not disenfranchised.
All right, so that was Jenna Ellis, President Trump campaign senior legal advisor. A lot to take in from this news conference, obviously, and we're going to break it down right here for you in just a moment here. Welcome, everyone, here to News Now from Fox. We're taking a listen there at President Trump's legal team, talking all about the legal challenges that they are going to be putting forward in a courtroom. I mean, there are some things that we have to right off the bat just say that was false right off the top. When Rudy Giuliani was talking about a baseless claim of really putting a blanket on all Democrats, saying that they are corrupt and evil, that obviously is not the case. There are good people on both sides of the aisle, and we all know that going forward. Some other things that we just want to point out to you right here on News Now from Fox. Just want to.
All righty then. If they could prove everything they said, stick a fork in it.
Yeah, sorry, I was taking off my mute. I think we're getting, yeah, there we go.
Counties. It is irredeemably compromised. We will show that, but you have to give us that opportunity. This has been just our opening statement, and we have an opportunity to get there, and we have time, and we will do that. This is the United States of America, and we stand proudly for President Donald J. Trump. Thank you.
The world is watching this. I have gotten multiple emails from people in other countries who watch the same pattern happen there. We have witness testimony that the same things were done in those countries as this was exported from Venezuela and by Maduro and by Mr. Chavez and by Cuba. And of course, we know China also has a substantial presence in Venezuela and substantial interest in making sure that President Trump does not continue in office. This is the consummate foreign interference in our election in the most criminal way you can possibly imagine. It must be shut down. We know, for example, that one of the Dominion's highest level employees or officers went to Detroit himself to man the Detroit Operations Center, where he could watch the votes coming in real time and decide what file folder in the system to put those votes into. That's why you see massive spikes after hours when people were told that all the votes were in and all the votes were counted. Many Dominion employees have already reached out to us to tell us the truth. They are Americans who want to ensure election integrity like we do. I would encourage every Dominion or Smartmatic employee who is fed up with the corruption in this country to come forward as soon as possible, because these are serious federal offenses that I am confident the Department of Justice will be in pursuit of in very short order if they are not already.
All right. A few questions?
Yeah, Mayor Giuliani, this sort of reminds us of 30 years ago, they had federal judges doing consent decrees over elections. So you got a federal judge overseeing the election. Chicago days. Will you be asking that in Georgia, where you have two Senate races, to have the U.S. District Court judges and federal authorities monitoring the election?
I can't say what's going to be done
In
about.
every county, we have sort of a Operation Gray.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't. In what county?
County, Pennsylvania.
Yes.
Atlanta, there's sort of an Operation Gray Board.
Mhm.
I don't know if you were.
Yep, I know about it. I really can't give you an opinion on that. I think obviously the election officials should learn something from this and be very, very careful with the next election. I know this is a lot of information that we've given you, probably because we're frustrated with what we keep reading and hearing in the censored press, which is that we have no evidence, we have no specifics, we have no backup for what we're saying, and you largely ignore the affidavits that are filed. Whether you agree or disagree with an affidavit, it's evidence. You can't say, I mean, you're just lying to the American people when you say there's no evidence. Sydney was giving you information that come from affidavits from other people that are given under oath. I was explaining things to you from affidavits that come from other people, American citizens, who swear under oath that they saw 100,000 ballots come in and that they were all for Joe Biden. And that I should point out, now that Sydney has spoken, that those happened just around the time that the Dominion or Smartmatic people called a halt to the election. And then you can also trace it with a very big spike in the vote count at exactly that time. Right up. So what we're telling you is supported by evidence. And we're going to have to present these because of the procedures that exist according to the different voting laws of the different states. For example, you asked us about Wisconsin. We have to first create a contest in Wisconsin before we can move to bringing a fulsome federal lawsuit. The contest, from everything I can see, is going to overturn the vote because it's going to show somewhere around 100,000 illegal ballots in 2 counties that Biden carried by 75, 80%. And you know how close Wisconsin is. And what I'm talking about is the absentee ballots for which there were no applications. And that's not just a small matter. The reason for the application and the reason to keep all these things together is precisely to avoid what the Democrats did in this election, which is to misuse the absentee ballot process and the mail-in ballot.
People are asking why we're laughing.
So they really cheated in 2 respects. They cheated with the machines.
Is that hair dye running
Instead of
down
asking
the
me, are we going to bring a lawsuit in Wisconsin, which we will if we have to, you should have asked me, and you should be more astounded by the fact that our votes are counted in Germany and in Spain by a company owned by affiliates of Chavez and Maduro. Did you ever believe that was true? Did any of you here believe that that was possible? Of course it's not. Of course it shouldn't be possible. I don't know if we're going to have time to develop all that in time to fill the requirements of all these cases. We have enough evidence without that to overturn this election. We have it from the affidavits of American citizens. But that's a matter of national security that we're talking about now. Very, very serious matter of national security. Please don't make light of it. And don't act like you knew it. Don't act like it isn't a surprise. If that's not a headline tomorrow, then you don't know what a headline is. There isn't a single person in this country that would have believed that we have states that are stupid enough to have our vote sent out of this country. You couldn't possibly believe that the company counting our vote with control over our vote is owned by 2 Venezuelans who were allies of Chavez, are present allies of Maduro, with a company whose chairman is a close associate and business partner of George Soros, the biggest donor to the Democrat Party, the biggest donor to Antifa, and the biggest donor to Black Lives Matter. My goodness, what do we have to do to get you to give our people the truth. Yes.
Thank you, Giuliani. My name is Liz Willis with RSCN. Some on this legal team have mentioned before that people close to the Trump campaign are pressuring them to drop the investigation into Dominion. Can you go further into detail and tell us specifically who those people are? Also, if it's possible, can you tell us if they work with some of our powerful defense groups in the United States, such as the CIA?
The last part was, do they work
With defense groups.
with defense groups and the CIA? First, I'm in charge of this investigation with Sydney and the people that you see here. There's been no pressure to stop investigating Dominion.
No,
in fact, there's pressure to go as fast as we can. I mean, I think there was uniform shock when we first heard it. I think when I first heard it, I didn't believe it until Sydney showed me the documents. And in fact, I feel kind of stupid, and you all should, because all you had to do is go online and find out that Smartmatic is owned by Venezuelans close to Chavez. You can Google it. Well, unless they take it down. I preserved it, so you can find it. Not, and by the way, the Coomer character, who is close to Antifa, took off all of his social media. But we kept it. We've got it. The man is a vicious, vicious man. He wrote horrible things about the president. He is completely biased. He's completely warped. And he specifically says that they're going to fix this election. I don't know what you need to wake you up to do your job and inform the American people, whether you like it or not, of the things they need to know. This is real. It is not made up. It is not. There's nobody here that engages in fantasies. I've tried 100 cases. I prosecuted some of the most dangerous criminals in the world. I know crimes. I can smell them. You don't have to smell this one. I can prove it to you 18 different ways. I can prove to you that he won Pennsylvania by 300,000 votes. I can prove to you that he won Michigan by probably 50,000 votes. When I went to bed on election night, he was ahead in all those states, every single one of those states. How is it they all turned around? Every single one of them turned around. Or is it more consistent that there was a plan to turn them around? And since there are witnesses who say there was a plan to turn them around, and it kind of begs credulity to say that it all happened in every single state. My goodness, this is how you win cases in a courtroom.
Block or delay certification so that you can pick their own electors. Is that the answer?
Our goal here is to go around the iron curtain of censorship.
I think we'll break it off right there.
Yeah.
And kind of wrap it up, because I really thought we were going to be able to get some stuff. I didn't know it was going to be that long, but a lot of information.
Yeah, that was a long one for sure.
It's still going with the questions, but if they can prove what they've just laid out, their opening statement, their case, if they can prove it, it's done. They're going to be crying in the streets, burning buildings.
Well, the thing is, too, from the sound of it, they kind of said, yeah, there were Democrats that played a part in this, but there were also other countries that interfered in this election as well. So the Democrats, if and when it does change to Trump, they can't be angry at Trump supporters. We did nothing wrong except for catch fraud.
And people say they were talking about, right, and they were talking about Venezuela. I just want to remind everybody that when all the countries left Venezuela because of the oil situation, they couldn't get it, and the corrupt regime of Maduro, the only country to stick around was Russia. And Russia single-handedly has propped up Venezuela.
Yeah, so if Venezuela and Russia or whoever, Venezuela has anything to do with it, and they interfere with our election, and then there were Democrat officials who somehow they knew about it, or they encouraged it, or they did other types of cheating with mail-in ballots. They were only helping it. You know where they messed up the most was they gave Joe too big of a margin. And that's the truth. They gave him too big of a margin of a win. People scratched their head. People scratched their head and said, you know what? You're not from this. Whoever did this, whoever controlled it, didn't realize, I think, how many votes Obama had in 2012 and then just went ape crazy on it. And then thought, oh, you know what? I never thought to check how many Obama had. Yeah, we shouldn't have given him more than Obama because that does look suspicious.
Yeah.
So they weren't.
That alone. You got more than the first black president of the United States, and
by 10 million.
You didn't campaign
by 10 million.
You basically stayed in your basement. You didn't go nowhere. No. And you got 10 million more votes.
What makes me believe that it was
Trump was doing all these rallies.
Right.
While Trump was doing all these rallies, 20,000, 30,000, 40,000 people showing up. 5 rallies in 24 hours.
Now it's starting to make sense.
Weeks on end.
Yep.
And he got 10 million more than he garnered the year before. From 2016.
Right. So it's actually starting to make sense that someone from another country would have given this many votes to Joe, not realizing, like I said, Obama had even more. An American would have caught that and said, oh no, you can't give Joe an extra 10, 20 million votes than Obama. That's going to look really suspicious. They're going to investigate that. It's kind of like when you're doing your taxes and you claim that you lost this much. If it's too big of a number, you're getting audited. The IRS is going to audit you. It's just common sense.
They didn't expect
exactly.
They didn't expect the American psyche. They don't understand the American psyche.
Well, no. I think they did, because that's why they put it in place to ignore us. Ignore the people's voices that would come up and say that this was fraud, because that's why the media keeps pushing President-elect Biden. I mean, at every turn, they are ignoring the heck out of, even though everything is starting to mount, they're still pushing that to the American people. And that's why we've said on this show, is going to be literally hell on earth. Because if this goes to the Supreme Court, and like you said, Brian, if they can prove it, if they can show proof, not just words, because when people give affidavits, it's basically their testimony. Yes, by fair perjury. Yes, I understand, but you have to have something to show. Now, if those people walk in there with documents and stuff saying this is it's going to be overturned. The Supreme Court has to say, and think about it, you can't have another election.
No, God,
you can't have another election, so you got to overturn this one. And if you overturn this one, oh my God, man.
There's going to be hell to pay for sure. And for you guys saying that Trumpers are the minority, 73 million people voted for Donald J. Trump, who was a workhorse with a track record of 47 months, unlike Joe Biden, who's not a worker and has been there for 47 years, putting black people in prison.
Well, I tell you what, I tell you this, you can call us the minority, but it looks like y'all the minority because y'all got 80 million fake ass votes. So, I mean, 74 million people have gone out to vote for President Trump. How many really did y'all get? About maybe 62, maybe 63 at the most for somebody who campaigned out of their basement. Man, y'all trying. Man, y'all really think somebody gonna go along with y'all's bull crap, man? Y'all really think that? I just feel bad. I just feel bad that it's just, I mean, honestly, I say this, Rudy, let Sydney and Jenna talk before the Supreme Court. I understand your passion, and I understand what you used to be as a trial lawyer. You will be great in giving them advice going forward, but let them do the presentation.
Yes, Sydney's the powerhouse.
Because Rudy can turn people off not by the evidence that he does, but just by the continuing presentation.
Yeah, the way that he projects and the way that his body language, his voice tones, they can be defensive. Where Sydney isn't like that, and she gives more informative, and sometimes he'll run off the subject and kind of go west or east where he needs to just stay on the path. And Sydney does a really good job at that. And if you notice while they're talking, what he's talking about is more on a local level. He talked about Philadelphia, the affidavits, stuff that's happening in Michigan. She's talking about an entire national level. She's the one who brought up about the Dominion voting machines and the issues that they had with Venezuela. Notice he didn't bring that up as much. So I think when you do come down to it, maybe he'll handle the small legal issues in Philly, Nevada, Michigan, but she's going to oversee the big Dominion software issue. I think that's where the key is. And I think that's where the presidency lies. It's with that Dominion issue.
There'll be no jurors. There'll just be judges.
Yeah.
And I think across the board.
It has to be like that, yeah.
No, I'm just saying, and across the board, they're gonna be fine. They're gonna do well. And if they can prove what they are saying they've got in front of a panel of judges, whether it be Supreme Court or not, it's going to be hard to say no to them.
Yeah.
I've said that since day one. Get into the courts with proof.
I wanted to know what y'all felt about Congress, and because the COVID situation is exploding right now, and it is November 19th. The election was November 3rd. We're 16 days away from the past election, and they still haven't passed a stimulus for people that are out of work. And Christmas is coming.
Nancy got that on a lockdown. That's Nancy.
Right. Exactly. Right. President Trump. Now, remember, President Trump was like, you give me just the bill by itself, nothing else, and I'll sign it today.
Mm-hmm. He said, make it big. He even said, make it big.
Make it big. I'll sign it today. And she didn't do it. She didn't do it. And now I'm hearing that she just got locked in for another term or as Speaker of the House.
Right. Democrats are voting all in for Pelosi, saying that she's the greatest Speaker of the House we've ever had in all the history of America.
And that ain't true.
Yeah, well, of course not.
Terrible.
So basically what I think is what I'll do is I will move this to Monday.
Okay.
Did you call in Monday?
Yeah.
Talk Monday. That sounds good.
Yeah, because we weren't able to get any calls in today.
It's not like it's going to change by Monday, right? So it's a perfect conversation for Monday.
But you know what? Let me ask y'all this, because this kind of perturbed me a little bit, and then we'll call it a day. I saw one of the members of the last march on DC. It's supposed to be a million MAGA. Turned out to be a couple 100,000, which is really great still. But this person decided that they want to do another march 2 days before the Electoral College. Am I old? Am I too old to remember when marches meant something and it was just and it wasn't a cosmetic type of thing? I think that the march should be on the day that the Electoral College meets.
Absolutely. Americans have short memories and attention spans.
Yeah.
Something like, can you remember what happened 2 days ago? We get the news so quick now. It feels like forever ago that Ben Carson had COVID. He still has it, but it feels like it was 6 weeks ago. But yeah, absolutely. You're completely right. It has to be done the day of.
Did they get the day mixed up?
I don't know. I don't know why they're doing it 2 days.
Who is it?
Amy Kramer. Amy Kramer. Kramer.
With who?
I don't know. She's associated with Women for Trump, but
okay.
Either way,
yeah. All right, yeah. I know who you're talking about. Women for Trump, right?
Yeah, but I mean, the thing is, it's 2 days. What I mean, Democrats would do it on that day.
Right.
Yeah, they would.
Why can't we show those people in DC, the electorate or whatnot? Did you see all those people out there? They could overrun this place in a second. We need to put some fear in their hearts too.
2 days prior. It's old news by the day.
Yeah.
It's old news.
Somebody said Wayne set it up with Ali. No, you set it up with Ali, and you give me a call.
I'll tell you something. You know, he told me. Well.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, be careful there. Remember our little smile we used to do?
Let's just say that the march that just happened wasn't the way that he thought it was going to be.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
I ain't saying that it was stolen from him.
Oh, no, well, nothing's ever stolen from Ali.
I'm just saying that it didn't go the way he planned it.
Right.
And I texted him too. I was like, I will put this on blast. I'll put it on blast. And he was like, no, that's okay.
Yep. No.
We do it. You know, we're in this together. But Ali and Never Nervous Purvis, Scott Pressler and some more of those people, they are out there and they are making their voices heard. And for people to come out of the woodworks to take over what they were doing is wrong.
Well, maybe they made it better.
I know what makes everything better. Super Hearts. And I want to thank everybody who gave them today. I love watching them. If you want to give Super Hearts, all you got to do is somehow click down. Brian knows how to do it. You click it and say, hey, I want to get some Super Hearts, and you can give those on Periscope. Also, Patreon as well. Thank you, audience, for helping out. You can go to patreon.com/WD show. And from there, you can give a pledge of $5, $10, $20. Maybe for Christmas, you're feeling extra giving. You can go to $20. And then in January, you can drop back down to $10. So, yeah. So that it's that easy to do.
That's right. And I saw Brian was giving us some beautiful hearts.
Much love. I was in a competition with somebody. They said,
well, you killed him, man. You killed him, man. I was like, good Lord, Brian, look at you.
That's it's this thing right here. You just get
you can do that.
Stop. Yeah, it just don't stop.
Yeah, you can do that.
All right, so ladies and gentlemen, we will see you on Monday. Y'all have a great weekend. Unless something pops off over the weekend.
You never know.
You never know what's going to go on.
Censor TV.
Yes.
Censor. Yeah.
Yes. Censor. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. We'll be seeing everybody on Monday. So if you have any questions, you can always email us, Wayne Dupree, or just get the app. Just get the app.
Get the app. Wayne Dupree podcast. Type it in your app store. Download it. That way, all you have to do is just click call into the studio. There's actually a button that allows you to call in. We're having Talk Monday. We're going to continue this talk on Monday. So we definitely want to hear what you have to say on Monday. Yes. And we do have a big surprise coming up on Monday. So if you're watching, you definitely want to tune in Monday because we got a big surprise on Monday. Something cool we're going to share with you.